First Japanese morning. In 2023, the year I decided to enroll in a Japanese language school. It was a great decision. I really like it in Japan now. I collected the documents on my own and all the paths I went through on my own too. This is what I want to tell you about. I submitted the documents for a visa on my own, reflected all the necessary data. And I can say for sure that it is possible for any person. Because there is no special knowledge for this. You just need to fill in the forms. Something you have to fill out in English, something in Japanese. But it's all at a very simple level that it's easy for anyone. I started collecting documents in 2022, in November. It was very spontaneous. I was not going to Japan before that, although my friends lived here. And I thought that in the future I wanted to visit this country at least, and at most to stay here for a long time. In November, I decided to see how much time I had left to apply. Because you can apply to school in certain periods. There are different forms of schooling. For 2 months most often you need to apply in summer. By the way, the least amount of documents is required and you can apply from the age of 14. You can study for half a year or 1 year or 2 years. I have now submitted documents to study in the future 2 years, but in fact 1 year and 3 months. And the visa is given for 1 year and 3 months. In November I decided to apply and generally find out what documents are needed and how much it costs. To get more accurate information. As it turned out, I had very little time. Because on December 9th schools already submit documents to migration. And after that migration will take about 2 months to prepare them. By December 9th, the school must already submit all the originals checked and corrected, if necessary. Since it was already November plus the forwarding of documents, I had about 1 or 2 weeks to prepare all this. This amount of time is actually very much in a pinch. So have a reserve. But, again, if you have instructions on how to do it, it's very easy. Because you just fill out the form, you make statements, you make translations, and I'll tell you about the documents probably later. I got all the documents together in 2 weeks, but then there were a lot of adjustments. Because, as I said, it was done on my own. But it was very easy because Sensei will always help you. I was just marking in red what I didn't know and asking what was meant. I was told that here you need, for example, to fill in the chronology of time from school to university. It requires, for example, experience in something, some kind of experience, where you have worked and things like that. Everything was just explained to me in detail. And I understood accordingly, described everything myself and submitted it. As you can see, I am already here, I got everything and submit the documents myself is realistic, if you have the desire to do so. Of course, through an agency it is always easier, but you will still need to give the agent your data, which just he will fill in. So, I don't know, I'm used to doing everything myself. So, I was going to move friends to Fukuoka. And so I was only looking for schools here. My friend helped me with a list of these schools, and I also searched more online. We made an Excel spreadsheet. Somewhere there were already contacts, somewhere I had to fill out a contact form, which I did. Schools respond to you as they process these requests. Please note that this does not happen immediately. You submit a request. 2 to 3 days, for maybe will pass while they answer you. The application is in English, so you can use a translator. If you have a good level of language, you can write it yourself, it is very simple. That is, you just talk about your desire to come. Where you are from, what is your name, how old are you, and ask your question. I asked how much it costs, what documents are needed, when are the deadlines for submission. Just a short letter like that, I started getting replies. As I received the letters, I formed an opinion about what I needed, how much time I had. As I said, there was no time, almost no time. I had an understanding of what documents I needed to gather, which in a nutshell was bank statement movement of funds for the last year, how much money is in the account, a diploma of higher education, and the stumbling block was a language certificate for level N5. I didn't know what to do. I had just decided to study there, I thought that they would teach me, not that I should come with some knowledge. It's actually a solvable issue. At the discretion of the school, there are different requirements depending on the program. Most often you can also come without one, but I can tell you right away that it is better to come with some understanding. It will simply be easier to learn, easier to start. As for the cost, 747,000 yen is tuition. 40,000 yen for filing. And here's the thing. You have to pay the 40,000 yen at once. If, for example, you don't submit all the documents, you don't get a visa or anything else, you won't get your money back, because the work has already been done, but you have to pay the remaining 700,000 yen when you get your visa. Before you enroll in school, but after you get your visa. So they won't send you the originals until you pay. So I think there is no problem here. I immediately transferred 40,000 yen when I was asked. Calculate at the exchange rate how much that would be at the moment. Most likely the amount in yen will be the same. And started collecting documents. So, the reason why we're studying Japanese is, I think, the second section of the application form. I wrote there that I want to study Japanese because I'm very interested in it. I love anime, I love Japanese music. I just found some popular bands in Japan and wrote it in. Before you do that, you'd better listen to what they're singing about. Maybe something really hard. I've been writing these kind of pop songs. I wrote some anime that I knew and I like. By the way, it's a whole culture, and when I came to Japan, it looks particularly interesting here. Really a whole art form. I also wrote that I want to learn Japanese culture, that it is easier to learn the language in the country than if you learn it separately, for example at home. I wrote the whole truth. That is, that it will be easier to learn the language here, that I want to know the culture, I want to see how Japanese people behave in everyday life. And actually, it's really beautiful. This is a great reason to come to Japan. The sponsorship letter in the application form is the third section. There you have to indicate who will pay all your expenses for accommodation, food, and so on. In general, all your expenses. Students can work. The requirement in Japan is that they work no more than 28 hours a week. That is 4 hours a day. Very many students work in combo. Cooking ramen and sushi, carrying something, cleaning hotels. In general, such a normal job for students. Pay them 990-1100 yen and per hour in the city of Fukuoka. That is, in principle, many students can live on it and feel quite well. The very life of Japan is inexpensive and you can afford to eat well, move around perfectly. But it will of course be different from the way you are used to do it in your native country. For example, here it is quite expensive to drive a car and it is expensive not to buy one. Cars themselves are cheap and it's expensive to park them. There is simply no free parking at all. If there is a free parking lot, it means it's someone's. There will probably even be a license plate. A person pays to rent a parking lot, you can't park in it. You'll probably get around on a 50 cubic centimeters moped, a bicycle. You probably won't be able to get around much on foot because the distances will be long. That's only if you live very close to the school. Well, the chance is slim. Public transportation is available, it's well developed. But it's expensive, of course. Buses cost 200 to 300 yen, subway fare is also 200 to 300 yen. It's already a considerable sum. It's expensive to take public transportation to school every day. I took the train to school for the first month. It only took me 7 minutes, but it was a Shinkansen. And it cost 330 yen. When I told the school, everyone was surprised. Shinkansen is really expensive, but even 330 yen for one ride is expensive. That's why a lot of people ride bicycles for free. In the sponsorship letter you mention yourself, about how you enclosed your bank account certificate. You will indicate that you are bearing all expenses yourself. In all the boxes, include your last name, first name, and it fits perfectly. I had everything perfect, so the sponsorship letter in this case is easy to fill out. That is, in the sponsor column you indicate that the sponsor is you. The questionnaire itself. You have to fill out the form carefully, but there is nothing scary about it at all. There are sections. I can then make out in detail what is in each section, what you need to write. In fact, everything is very simple and logical. You provide all the information about yourself. You have to show the whole chronology of your life. That is, starting from entering elementary school, middle school, high school, to entering the university, indicate your job. That is, until the moment of submission of documents, you need to understand where you were, what you were doing. This is really very important. You don't want to cheat here, you don't want to put something up. Because they need a logical course of your life. In this case, just by looking, by realizing that you really want to learn. You studied your country, you worked, and now you decided to enroll in a language school in Japan. There is a rationale for this, meaning you have stated your reasons. This is easily accepted. Therefore, the forms are filled out quite simply. Although there are complex moments, nuances of filling out this particular form. In general, there are a lot of forms in Japan, and be prepared for that. Because when you arrive, you will fill out a lot of different documents. There will need to constantly write something, so start practicing at once. So, a diploma of higher education. It is necessary to make a scan of the diploma. Diploma should be translated into English. The whole point is that if you submit, for example, a diploma from Russia, Ukraine, of any other language, most likely they will not be able to read it. So they will ask for a translation. I can say that I translated all the documents myself. There is nothing complicated about it. You make a scan, then make a mask in a photo editor of some kind. And write on top of your language, write in English. Last name, first name, date of birth, all subjects you passed. All disciplines you also indicate in English right on top. This will be a great document to submit. Basically, I first submitted all the documents in Russian, after which I was asked to make a translation. If you calculate how much you have to pay for this in a translation agency, it will be a large sum. In fact, I believe that there is no need to go to a translation agency for this particular procedure. Because the only document that I had was not translated by me, which was from a translation agency, they returned it to me. They made a lot of mistakes in it. Although I was 100% sure of it, I thought they would do a better job than me. No, that's the only document they gave me back. And it's good that I had time to correct it. Actually, I turned to a translation agency to make it faster and better. In the end, it turned out to be better to do it myself. So we translate the diploma into English and send this document in PDF or scan to the school. So, bank statement. You need to show the documents that will show that you have $15,000 in accounts. It can be more than one account, it can be different currencies. It doesn't matter how, the important thing is that it adds up to $15. Cryptocurrency, by the way, doesn't qualify. There must be real banks, all statements must be translated into English. This is also very important. I had money in rubles, in euros, in general in different currencies. I made all the statements, translated everything into English. As I told you, I do it myself. You just make a scan, a mask, and write on top. And such statements I submitted. In total, I got more than $15,000, and this is a very important point. Do more than $15,000. Because the exchange rate can change at the time of filing or something like that. If you fall a little short, that's grounds for rejection. Some schools ask for $10,000 to show. It all depends on the school. But it's very important for you to comply with the school's requirements. As much as they say, that's how much you need to show. It is better to do more than $1,000. In my opinion, no matter how the rate changes, it will still protect you. It will be very frustrating if you have already applied and you are denied. Besides, you will also pay for the collection of documents at that moment. It's about 40,000 yen. It would be a shame to be rejected because of such a problem. That's why we strictly fulfill all the requirements. If you are told to show 15,000, we show 15,000. A statement of funds for the last year. This is what the bureau translated for me. They translated it, by the way, for 2,500 rubles. Because it was an express translation and it was only one page. You have to show a certificate. Not even a certificate, but rather a statement for the last year about how you spent your money. I showed it just from the card I use. You order a statement in your personal cabinet, specify the period, and it comes to you. As a rule, the statement comes in one language. Not all banks do it in English, but if you can do it in English, do it in English. You don't have to translate anything then. I didn't have that opportunity. I couldn't translate a huge stack of sheets, of course. I checked with the school about what needed to be done. They told me that only the first page needed to be translated. That's fine. I realized that I didn't have time to translate there. I didn't have time for that, so I decided to use a translation agency. I sent that first page, asked them to translate it for me. I was driving at the time they sent me the document to check. I thought the bureau would probably translate one page. It was just a few lines. I looked at it, said it was fine. I immediately sent it straight from my phone to the school's post office. It was the only document I got back because it had the usual mistakes. There was a mistake in my residential address. There was a mistake in my name in 2 places. Everything else seemed to be translated correctly. Or maybe not, maybe they just didn't check. But these documents appear in other documents, for example, in my application form. That is why I received a message from the school that I have mistakes. Please explain what this statement is, why it contains these errors. I corrected it. More precisely, I called the translation company, said I asked them to correct the errors. They told me that I had already accepted it, but in general went to my satisfaction, corrected it. But, of course, this is very bad because you should make as few mistakes as possible when submitting documents, because it also shows your attitude. Unfortunately, yes, that's what happened to me. I sent a new good statement which I had already checked. Yes, indeed, it was already error-free. It was accepted. So check everything, especially if someone does it for you. The first page was translated into English, the rest was accordingly in Russian. All this was accepted, it was enough for a language school. And now what probably scares a lot of people, namely the N5 language certificate. To study the language 150 hours. Here, of course, is interesting. Because this is a requirement that you have to fulfill, and indeed, I can explain why. The fact is that when you enter a school, the school wants to get through the initial stages of learning faster and move on to the more difficult parts. Accordingly, they will still teach hiragana, katakana, and some kanji with you. But they want it to be repetition, not learning new things. They want you to know how to write, how to read. At school they only speak to you in Japanese, sometimes English. But at my school, they only speak Japanese. When I clarify something in English, they're fine with it. But if I explain something in English, they say switch to Japanese. And I have to remember how to say it. I say it with mistakes, practicing and practicing and practicing. But really, the requirement is that you have to speak only in Japanese. Not in Russian for sure. It is not applicable anywhere in Japan. So when you enter school, you already need to know such basic things. That's what this confirmation is for. Because no one will ask you what exactly you know. What they want from you is a document that will confirm that you know. You have already studied 150 hours. I didn't have that document. I thought I would enroll in school and learn from scratch. But when I saw this requirement, and this requirement was in different schools, that is, all the schools send me the requirements for N5, I realized I had a problem. 150 hours. When am I going to teach them? I was so honest and told my sensei that I don't have that certificate. I probably won't be able to get it in time since it's like half a year to study. If it's November and I arrive to enroll in April, I have November, December, January, February, March, and early April. So I have almost 6 months to study it, and I'm ready to study it with a tutor. And then the school went towards me. They told me that if you take it seriously, then we will accept the documents from you. But please study Japanese all this time and watch your progress so that you succeed. Not everyone can apply without a certificate. But if you are serious, if everything else is in order, I am sure that the school will meet your needs. And, of course, we need a passport scan. I want to pay attention to the fact that the scan of the passport, we must make a good one. How do I make scans of all the documents? We all know that there is an option in Notes to scan documents. We just put the document on a uniform surface, for example, on the sofa, on the floor, on the tablecloth, point the camera and everything around our document is cut off. A very high-quality good scan without any complications. But as we know, the passport wants to fold back. And so I held it up with 2 fingers and pointed at the camera. Basically, this scan worked for me in probably all countries. Everywhere I could apply, I sent the scan, it worked. But in Japan, they didn't see it right away, and at the last moment they told me that you don't have a scan, but a photo. And I had to make such a scan very quickly, and at that moment I did not have my passport. It was in the migration service of another country. I was submitting other documents as well. I was very surprised. What should I do now? Actually, there was a solution. I called, explained the situation, asked to send me a scan of my passport. I was sent the scan to my email. Thus, I was able to submit it. Accepted the documents. So, pay attention, make yourself a good scan, keep it with you. Everything else can be scanned in the normal way. So, when we have collected all the documents, we must now submit them. We send them by email, and the originals that we are asked for will have to be sent by mail. Preferably sent by some sort of express mail so that it gets there faster. Of the things that are required, it is the original diploma we will need to send, a letter of reasons for learning Japanese. We have to sign it manually, that we have made a form in the application form. We will need to print out this page and sign, then send the originals. We will also need to send the original of the sponsorship letter. This is the 3rd section from the form. Also sign it, send it. In principle, everything will be clear there, because the school itself will tell you what documents you need to sign and send them. But pay attention to the original diploma we'll need to send. All this is packed in an envelope. Send, get a tracking track. We send it to the school. And then they thank us. We wait for the school to receive the documents. After the school gets the paperwork, they'll let you know it's okay. We got the paperwork, we send it to immigration. After that they will say that everything is fine, now we are waiting for a reply. Then we just have to wait. So at the beginning of December I send all the documents to the school, all the originals. I get a letter from the school that they received my documents, submitted, everything is fine. And in February, around the end of February, they send me a letter that I received an invitation. Now the school requires me to pay for a full year of tuition. There are different schools. In some schools you can pay for half a year. In some schools you have to pay for a year's tuition at once. Specifically at my school it was as follows. I had to pay for the first year of tuition in full, and I could pay for the second year of tuition half a year at a time. I was fine with that. And before sending you the original invitation, the school would ask you to pay the full amount for the first year of tuition. I paid the school, they confirmed the payment, they confirm it very quickly. Literally the next day, probably while the money came in, they said the money was received and they are sending me the original documents. They ask for your current address. Where to send the documents to, I wrote the address where I was at that point. It took about a week for the documents to reach me. They send me back the original of my diploma. They send me the original invitation from immigration and the original of my school enrollment. There was also a fourth document. It was a memo about what to bring with me in April, namely the class schedule. There are 2 shifts. You can study in the morning, you can study in the afternoon. It doesn't affect anything yet, it's just information. That is in which shift you will study, you can tell already in school. If they have the opportunity to determine the time convenient for you, then you will study at this desired time. It was more convenient for me to study in the morning, but not everyone is convenient to study in the morning, because many people have part-time jobs in the morning. Those who work in the kitchen to work breakfast, cleaning hotels, and the like can choose morning hours. I found it better to study in the morning on a fresh head, so I chose the morning hours, as I said later. So there you will have a memo on what classes are held and what schedule they are on. Typically, classes start at 9 a.m. The first class lasts an hour and a half, then there's a break of about 20 minutes. You can eat, rest, and the second pair is another hour and a half. Then you are free. It's every day, 5 days a week. Here's a list of what you'll need: notebooks, pen, eraser. Basically, whatever they ask for. And the last item that confused me was the suit. Why do I need a suit? Actually need a suit. When I arrived, I thought, I'm not going to wear a suit. Especially since it's still going to be hot in the summer. I'm a student after all, because I'll just walk around neat. I bought myself some new clothes. When I looked at what the other students were wearing, I realized I had done the right thing. I just wore sneakers, pants, and a sweatshirt. That was enough. But then I had this moment. Why you need a suit? Not everyone needs one. But I was told that since I was a student from Russia, I was asked, or rather told, to give the commencement speech at the ceremony for new students. And I had to give that speech. To do this you need to dress in a suit, which is a shirt, pants, shoes, and a tie. Anyway, I went to the store and bought everything for myself. In Japan, a lot of people in Japan wear suits, for example, to work and so on. Such a dress code, so suits you can find for rent, you can buy it. I decided to buy it because I thought I'll probably still have other ceremonies, some evenings, and I'll still need it. And you can buy it very budget-friendly because casual suits are neat and nice. You can buy yourself a suit like that and you can have it for an event like that. I spent some money on it, by the way. A few tens of thousands of yen. But here it was more of a problem that if you're tall, you need to find the right clothes. It's not the size of your shoulders, it's the length of your legs. To me, all the pants were short and it was really hard. Even the ones that were a size large were still short for me. They were big in the waistband and short in length. But somehow I got through it, I found something after all. So anything is possible. So you'll get this handout about what you need. With the invitation from immigration, you'll have to get a visa. This is the basis for the visa. You can translate through an interpreter and you'll see that this is not a document that you can use to fly into the country. So you still need a visa. But when you apply, you attach this invitation. And you get a visa. I've told you how I applied. How I collected them, translated them. I think a lot of your questions have been answered. Now there are questions that are specific to you. Some nuance always comes up. And I graduated like this, how do I translate this, how much do I show? I understand. If you have a question, you can write to me. Show me some documents that you have doubts about. I will tell you my opinion about it. How to make it better, because, as I said, when you go through it yourself, the understanding becomes much brighter. I have plans to continue reviewing my life in Japan, because I live in a separate apartment of my own. I will tell you how to look for a low-priced apartment so that it is inexpensive, because Japan is, of course, an expensive country. But for those who live here, it is very cheap. Everything is at very low prices. If you compare, for example, life in Russia, I can say that in Japan you can live much better, but at the same time much cheaper. This is my experience, because these are my expenses that I have to bear here. I can tell you about buying equipment, furniture, because I furnished everything. I can also talk about transportation and things like that. So follow, watch, comment and ask more questions, because it makes me think of something else interesting that I may not have thought of. Something that is difficult for me, I try to show because that was my stumbling block. And for example, something that was easy for me, I didn't focus on. And for others, maybe it will be such an issue that is not clear. No problem, I'm ready to talk about it here, since I'm on site. And you'll be here shortly.